The night the roses died, the man I used to be died with them. Constance Whitmore thought she'd just poisoned a garden, but what she really did was wake a sleeping wolf. She had no idea that the old man next door wasn't just a grieving widower. He was a federal judge with nothing left to lose. For 15 years, Thaddius Morrison had lived the life of a quiet warrior, a man who'd spent half his career burying white-collar criminals behind iron bars. His home in Willowbrook Heights was his sanctuary, a small, blue-sided craftsman house filled with laughter, memories, and the faint scent of roses that his late wife Sarah had planted before cancer took her. Every creak of the floorboards whispered her name. Every petal carried her warmth. When Sarah died, Thaddius promised her one thing: to raise their daughter Zara in peace. No more high-profile cases, no more enemies, just backyard barbecues, Little League, and bedtime stories. For 3 years, he kept that promise. He became the neighborhood's quiet hero, always helping Mrs. Lucy carry groceries, fixing kids' bikes, volunteering for charity drives. The man had traded the courtroom's chaos for suburban calm. Until she moved in, Constance Whitmore arrived in a white Escalade that screamed, "Look at me!" Designer sunglasses, fake smile, and perfume that could suffocate an elephant. Within 72 hours, she'd appointed herself HOA compliance coordinator, waving a clipboard like a crown. The problem? The HOA hadn't legally existed since the 1980s, but Constance didn't need power to act like she had it. She just needed fear. Her first target was small: my mailbox. It was vintage, cast iron, painted years ago by Sarah herself. A little chipped, a little weathered, but priceless to me. Non-compliant, Constance announced, her smile sharp as glass. Replace it within 48 hours or face daily fines. I tried diplomacy first. A gentle letter citing the law, that our HOA lacked any legal authority, that harassment of federal employees violated civil codes. I even ended it politely. That should have ended it. Instead, it started a war. 3 days later, I found her in my front yard, wearing gardening gloves and a smirk. She was spraying something on Sarah's memorial rose garden. The smell hit me before the horror did: industrial herbicide. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded, running toward her. "Oh, just solving a little pest problem," she said sweetly. "Bees, you know. Can't have children getting stung." Each pump of that spray bottle was like watching Sarah die again. The roses withered under her touch, black veins spreading across petals like poison. "You're trespassing," I warned. "Leave before I call the police." Constance laughed. "I am the law here, Mr. Morrison. Try not to take it personally." That night I buried what was left of Sarah's roses, and what was left of my patience. By morning, the prosecutor in me had woken up. I spent a full day installing 6 security cameras across the property. Night vision, cloud backup, the whole fortress setup. Years of legal experience told me one thing: sociopaths always escalate. And she did. 3 nights later, at 2:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the feed and saw her, dressed in black, creeping through my backyard like some suburban ninja. In her hands, bleach, and a stack of fake HOA violation notices. She poured chemicals into my soil, slid forged papers under rocks, and even forged the signature of Mrs. Lucy, our sweet, 87-year-old neighbor, who could barely hold a pen. I had her on video, clear as day. Trespassing, fraud, forgery, a perfect slam-dunk case. The next morning, I walked into the police station with a folder so airtight it could have survived a hurricane. But Sergeant Rick Bellows didn't even open it. "Mr. Morrison," he sighed, pushing the folder back. "Mrs. Whitmore's a respected member of the community. Maybe you're overreacting, given your wife's passing." That was when I realized what I was truly up against. This wasn't one woman's madness, and it was a web of power, corruption, and complicity. Weeks later, her harassment became relentless. My sister Rebecca came to visit for Zara's birthday, parking her old Honda in my driveway like she'd done for years. At dawn, a tow truck hauled it away. "No overnight guest parking," the driver grunted. Guess who signed the violation notice? Constance. Guess who owned the towing company? The brother of Sergeant Bellows. the same cop who'd dismissed my evidence. That evening, while Rebecca tried to find her car, I sat at my desk surrounded by public records, legal documents, and fury. Every case I'd ever prosecuted had taught me one thing: evil always leaves a paper trail, and Constance Whitmore's trail was glowing red hot. She'd created fake HOA bylaws, filed fraudulent complaints, used intimidation to extort money from vulnerable neighbors, elderly widows, single parents, minorities. The pattern was unmistakable. But what made my blood truly freeze was her latest stunt. That afternoon, Zara came home early from school, pale, shaking, eyes wide with terror. "Daddy," she whispered, "there were men in our house." 2 men claiming to be inspectors had broken in. They'd taken photos of everything: her room, my files, our family pictures. When she asked them to leave, they told her, "Little girls shouldn't question authority." That was the moment I stopped being patient. That night I filed a federal restraining order. And for a brief, shining moment I thought justice might prevail. Until the next morning, when Constance stood on my porch with 2 police officers, fake tears glistening under the sun. "She threatened my life," she said sweetly. "He said he'd bury me where no one would find the body." The officers handed me a counter-restraining order, signed by a corrupt judge before mine was even processed. In that instant, I realized she wasn't just playing HOA games anymore. She was building a legal trap. And she'd just stepped into the wrong courtroom. The night after that fake restraining order, I sat in my study with a glass of bourbon and a stack of case files, the glow of my monitor reflecting off the same walls Constance had tried to violate. Outside, the neighborhood was silent, but my mind wasn't. I kept replaying her smirk, the way she looked at me when those officers stood beside her, believing every rehearsed tear. It was a performance, and she'd perfected her role. But the one thing a sociopath never plans for is someone who can play the long game better. I made a phone call I'd been avoiding since Sarah's funeral. "Marcus, it's Thad. I need a favor." Marcus Webb had been my roommate in law school, now a senior investigator at the FBI specializing in financial crimes. He'd spent a decade hunting billion-dollar fraudsters and corrupt officials. If there was anyone who could trace Constance's trail of deceit, it was him. "Jesus, Thad," he grumbled through the phone. "You sound like a man about to burn the world down." I looked at the empty glass in my hand and replied quietly, "Only her world." 2 days later, Marcus called back, his voice sharp with disbelief. "You were right. She's not just a bully, she's a full-blown criminal." He laid out the picture with the precision of a surgeon. Constance owed nearly $90,000 in back taxes. Her husband's overseas oil job? Fake. The man had been working at a truck stop in Nevada for months. Their luxury cars were on the verge of repossession, their mortgage underwater, their credit maxed. "And it gets better," Marcus said. "She's been collecting illegal HOA fees, over 300 grand from your neighbors. No record, no fund, just straight into her personal account." The rage that hit me wasn't the burning kind. It was cold, focused, and clinical. Every dollar she'd stolen came from people who trusted their community. Mrs. Lucy, the sweet widow who baked cookies for every kid on the block, had been threatened with fines she couldn't afford. A young family had sold their car to pay off fake violation notices. It wasn't just fraud. It was predation. "We can nail her for mail fraud, wire fraud, housing discrimination, maybe even civil rights violations," Marcus continued. "She targeted single parents and minorities. There's a pattern here." That night, I didn't sleep. I wrote 23 pages of detailed evidence requests, subpoenas, and outlines for a federal task force proposal. I was done waiting for justice. I was going to build it. By morning, I'd made 3 more calls. One to Special Agent Rebecca Torres from the FBI's Housing Crimes Division, another to Sarah Liu from IRS Criminal Investigations, and one to Maria Santos from the Department of Justice Civil Rights Unit. Within 72 hours, a small army of federal investigators was quietly mobilizing in Willowbrook Heights. While they moved behind the scenes, I went door to door through the neighborhood. I didn't bring legal jargon or titles. just cookies and conversation. One by one, I listened to stories of fear and silence. Mrs. Lucy whispered that Constance had threatened to call immigration on her grandson, a decorated Marine veteran. The Rodriguezes, a young couple with 2 small children, confessed they'd been paying community maintenance fees for a pool that didn't exist. An elderly man showed me receipts for $5,000 in fake landscaping fines. Each story carved another mark into the case I was building, every victim another piece of the noose tightening around her. But gathering testimony wasn't enough. I needed real-time proof. That's when Detective Luis Mendoza entered the picture. State Police, Internal Corruption Unit. A good man tired of watching small-town officers like Sergeant Bellows protect criminals with fancy addresses. "You've just given me probable cause for wiretaps," he said after hearing my evidence. Within days, court orders were signed, phones tapped, emails monitored, surveillance vans parked discreetly at the edge of our perfect little suburb. Every lie she told was now echoing in federal recorders. Weeks passed, and the evidence poured in like a storm. Constance had set up fake property management companies complete with invoices for community patrols and landscaping upgrades. The reality? There were no patrols, no upgrades, just fake documents designed to scare people into paying. Her text messages were a masterclass in cruelty. Target the single parents first. They're easy to scare. Elderly people don't fight back, keep the pressure up. And then, the one that made my blood turn to ice. Morrison's the big one. Break him and everyone else falls in line. She'd spent hours researching me online, my wife's obituary, my daughter's medical history, even my old case transcripts. She wasn't just running a scam, she was running psychological warfare, and she'd made it personal. Every bit of harassment, every fake fine, every whisper in the neighborhood, it was all designed to isolate and destroy me. She wanted the judge to lose control, to snap, so she could claim victimhood. What she didn't realize was that I'd spent a lifetime mastering self-control. By the end of the month, the FBI had enough to build an entire case file taller than my desk. Fraud, extortion, mail fraud, wire fraud, tax evasion, civil rights violations, conspiracy, and criminal harassment. The walls around Constance's little empire were closing in, but she didn't sense it. Not yet. She was still playing queen, walking her manicured dog, smiling at neighbors she'd secretly threatened. Her arrogance was her blindfold. Then, like all criminals who feel the noose tightening, she panicked. One Thursday evening, I returned home to find my front door slightly open. Inside, chaos, drawers overturned, papers scattered, photos ripped. On the kitchen table lay an envelope labeled, "Evidence of Judicial Misconduct." Inside were forged bank statements, fake emails, and a letter supposedly written by me, threatening her life. A sloppy frame job, but dangerous enough to start a scandal if it reached the media. She'd tried to destroy me the only way left. Reputation. But what she didn't know was that her cousin Derek had been caught on video planting the documents, his every move tracked by federal surveillance. We had the full audio of her instructing him. "Leave the envelope on the table, make sure it looks real." It was almost poetic. She was framing herself while trying to frame me. The next morning, local news stations broadcast a story titled, "Federal Judge Under Investigation." Her plan had gone public, but in doing so, she'd triggered something even she couldn't control. Federal jurisdiction. You can smear a local man, but you can't smear a federal judge without summoning the entire Department of Justice. And that was her final mistake. Because now, the hunt wasn't just personal, it was official. The morning of the fire began like any other. Courtroom arguments, motions, the quiet hum of justice. But by the time the gavel dropped, my phone was already buzzing with horror. House fire. 847 Maple Street. My house. My home. Everything I had left of Sarah and Zara. I broke every traffic law in the state getting there. The smoke rose like a black ghost above Willowbrook Heights, visible miles away. Fire trucks crowded the street, neighbors huddled together, eyes wide with disbelief. Then I saw her, my daughter standing on Mrs. Lucy's lawn, soot-streaked, shaking, clutching her mother's locket in trembling hands. Daddy, she sobbed. I tried to call 911. It was already burning. I held her as the world we'd built turned to ash. The fire chief's words were barely audible over the sirens. Accelerant. Multiple ignition points. Intentional. This wasn't an accident. This was murder disguised as chaos. Within hours, federal investigators arrived. Not local police, not Bellows. The Bureau, the ATF, the Department of Justice. They treated the scene like a battlefield. And when they reviewed the neighborhood security footage, the truth unfolded like a confession from hell. Derek Whitmore, Constance's cousin, entering our home at 1:47 p.m., duffel bag in hand. He wasn't subtle. He wasn't smart. He'd used his own credit card to buy accelerants and timers at a nearby hardware store just hours before the fire. By nightfall, Derek was in custody. Within hours, he cracked. The man folded faster than wet paper. She said you were ruining her life, he stammered. Said burning your house would shut you up. Said nobody was supposed to get hurt. But his voice trembled when he revealed the worst part. She'd paid him with stolen HOA money. The wiretaps, already in place, confirmed everything. Her own voice, calm and venomous, spilled through the recordings. Use enough to destroy everything. Start in the basement, that's where he keeps his files. I want his life erased. Those words became the noose that finally hung her. Within hours, federal agents surrounded her mansion. She was dragged out in silk pajamas, screaming about her rights, still believing the world revolved around her. But when she saw me standing beside the FBI vans holding Zara in my arms, her smirk finally died. 6 months later, her trial filled national headlines. HOA queen turns arsonist. The courtroom overflowed with victims, families she'd robbed, neighbors she'd bullied. The evidence was devastating. Her emails, her fake HOA records, her bank accounts, and finally, the recording of her plotting to burn our home. When Judge Hernandez asked if she had anything to say before sentencing, Constance stood up, chains clinking. I was protecting the community, she hissed. People like him think they're above the rules. The judge's response was colder than steel. No, Mrs. Whitmore, people like you think they are the rules. 15 years. No parole. The gavel dropped. Cheers erupted. Mrs. Lucy cried. Zara smiled for the first time in months. The reign of terror was finally over. 2 years later, our house stood again, stronger, brighter, alive. The roses bloomed where ashes once lay, tended daily by Mrs. Lucy. Zara, now 16, practiced baseball in the yard, her laughter echoing through rebuilt walls. Our neighborhood thrived, free from fear. The fake HOA was gone. The real one, transparent, honest, lawful, protected instead of prayed. And every spring, when the roses bloom red against the sun, I remember the woman who thought she could destroy me. Because she was wrong. She didn't break me. She built something stronger. And in the end, justice didn't just catch her. Justice bloomed,